Hello, everyone. Last February, the Nova Scotia Network for Social Change and NS GovLab hosted the Power of Connection Across Generations, where we were joined by Raven Davis, Dr. Lynn Jones, and Quentrel Provo for a panel discussion on intergenerational connection and change work across the generations. Even though quite some time has passed since we first hosted this event, the wisdom and learnings that were shared by these community leaders are timeless, and it's very much a conversation that is still alive today and in the future. With that, we are sharing with you today our panel discussion on the power of connection across generations. Enjoy.
So to get started, I'm going to ask the first question, and then whichever one of our panelists wants to jump in first, go right ahead. And we have about 5 minutes for everybody to answer each question. So to begin, our first question is, can you speak a bit about the type of change work you were involved in? What did change work look like for you? And are there any learnings you would like to share?
Okay, I've unmuted. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this panel. It's my first, where the issue of intergenerational collaboration has been the topic. So I congratulate you on getting us together to talk about these things. I'm quite opinionated when it comes to what happens between the generations. So in some ways, I think I better bite my tongue a bit. They have a saying that if you want to get something done, then find a busy person to do it, because they juggle all these different things. So I'm not inviting you to ask me to do things with you or for you, but I would take a moment to share some of the things that I juggle. And I didn't really think about this until I was preparing for this panel. I said, this is crazy. Like, how are you doing these things? So first, in your question, thank you for the question. It's what type of work, change work are you involved in? And my list is too long to tell you everything, so I'll just highlight some of the things that I'm doing. You mentioned the archiving, and I'm proud of my archives because I started it from a little girl. I'm talking, it's about 7 or 8 years old, and I carried it through for over 50 years, as a matter of fact, because I felt that marginalized communities weren't being addressed in the media, in newspapers and magazines. So I collected all these articles, which I was scared at the end, talk about generations that would get sidelined or put in the garbage by somebody. But I'm pleased St. Mary's has taken it on. But it doesn't stop there, because that change work continues. The operative word is public access. So there's all kinds of people that are doing research. I love it. Over this work I started as a little kid, like imagine, 8 years old, and you collected something, and professors and community activists are using that work to inform the change work that they're doing now. So that's exciting. A life of protesting. I can remember protesting in high school, talk about generations in high school, because the government of the day decided that a music room and a gym wasn't important, and they didn't put it in our school. So we had a complete walkout at our school when I was president to protest that we wanted our music room and our gym. And that change work is still work that needs to be done, because in all of those years since I was high school president, there's never been a Black woman president since then. In fact, there's only been one other Black senior president in that school, which is in Truro. At my time, there were 1,500 students. There's actually a lot more students now, no leadership in terms of that. So there's those kinds of things. I really enjoy. I just finished doing some work at CBC, and it was to try to put the Black community and reporters and CBC together to talk about how can we change the narrative that's happening in terms of how we report and what the results are that we're looking for as a part of that. So that's exciting work. It was two short sessions, but I know that there needs to be more ongoing work, and CBC is recognized, like we haven't even tipped the iceberg. That's change work. My 5 minutes is probably up, and I haven't even got the first three things off my list of how many. So I won't keep going with that. But I think the next question that you asked, because you really don't have time to share all that change. Maybe in the question it's an answer period. But it was what learnings, I think, Janet, was it that you asked? What learnings that you learned? I learned in the process, both from being a young person at one time doing this work. I couldn't have done that work without the leadership of my elders. Of course, it starts at home with my parents helping to guide me. Like a simple thing like chairing a meeting. That was like, how was I going to be president and didn't know how to really chair that meeting? Like, to help you through the process. Now, even to this day, without the support in that change work of others, because you don't do it alone, and keeping your eye on who you're there to serve. I'm there to serve my community and the people. So it's got to take the eye out of the picture. But here's where I tread on shaky ground. When I look at the intergenerational collaborations and what have you today, I think there's a narrative we need to correct. Gee, elders get to correct. And that is this concept that somehow or the other, elders should move aside and let the youth come in. There's something wrong with that scenario, but I'm not going to give you the answer. We're going to pick that up, I'm sure, in the question and answer. Should elders move aside and let the youth do their thing? So I leave you with that. Thank you.
First of all, I want to say thank you guys for having me. It's an honor to be here. And I like the way you have the panelists, the intergenerational piece. I'll stick to the questions and give a little bit about that. Can you speak about the type of change work that you're involved in? I started Stop the Violence about 9 years ago. I didn't want to be an activist. That was not what I was going to do in life after high school, but losing a close cousin kind of took me down this journey that I didn't know nothing about. I was going through hurt and pain, and I just said, I want to create change and make a difference for my community and for young people everywhere. So basically, Stop the Violence was just, it started out as just a march, and I was marching and doing marches and bringing people together. But then it evolved into something bigger than I ever expected. I was doing something I thought, I could bring people together and kind of get their way of giving them hope. And so I did the marches, and then it turned into, clothing brand. And then now I'm doing a lot of mentorship, and not just mentorship with youth in the school. I mentor, a lot of young men that either been incarcerated or, out, because I find if I can reach them and just be a listening ear, anything I could do to help. So my change work is kind of circle around mentorship and kind of trying to groom those young people so they don't go down the wrong road. One of the things I did learn, I always, pay homage to the elders. that came before me that were, activists and still activists like Lynn Jones, Rocky Jones, I look up to L Jones, those are the people that I look up to kind of give me guidance. And I know, Lynn had hit on that piece, and I was going to hit on that piece where they say the elders should step aside and let the young people take over. But we can't, as young people, we can do what we do without the elders. We need their guidance. We need their help. And so it's not them setting us, we shouldn't set them aside. Basically, we need them to get where we're going. And after everything they've been through and brought us through, there's no way we can set them aside. A lot of things that I've learned in being in change work, it is stressful. It is hard. And if you don't have people in your corner to keep your head on straight and keep you positive and keep people praying for you, it can mess you up a lot mentally. With the negative things that come your way. I've dealt with a lot of racism, a lot of threats over the years. And had it not been for having the support system that I have in place around me, I wouldn't be able to get where I'm at today. And also, I always say this, in my change work, I learned that one child is one caring adult from being great and being a success story. That's one of the things I live by. And so if they just have one caring adult in their life, someone that will stay on them and keep them accountable and help direct their path, they will, turn out to be a success story and such. So that's a little bit about what you guys asked. So I'll pass it over to Raven.
Thank you, Quentrel. Good morning, everyone. So lucky and so blessed to be on this panel with all of you. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I had to do a quick switch of computers. My laptop was lagging there, so thanks for your patience. Wow. I don't think I would be doing the work that I do now if it wasn't for elders in my community. Everything I've learned has been from elders that I look up to, people that are, and also youth, when we think about our circle and who's involved in that conversation, it involves everyone. It involves every generation. What we learn from babies, from newborns, even just being with them for a week, to what we learn from someone who's on their last days. All of those stories, all of those experiences are valuable. And I started quite young in Toronto, went right in deep in abolition work, working in the early 90s. There was a program in the city that was supposed to be like Indigenous people go into Black organizations and Black folks go into Indigenous organizations. And it was a cross-cultural type of program that they had at one point. And I was placed in an organization that has a legacy of incredible abolition work. It was called the Black Action Defense Committee, and with Dudley Laws and Charles Roach. And I had a little table. Dudley Laws was to my left shoulder, and other people in the organization were in the room, and just listening to the conversations on the phone, looking at the fax machine, because we had fax machines, picking up those newsletters, just taking on a lot of the work that went before us, the work that came before us, and realize that this is a long road, long journey in change making. And if you want to be a part of it, you have to actually be committed for a long haul. You can't just jump in and jump out whenever it's convenient. Granted, lots of people get pretty tired, which is understandable and fair, but it is a lot of work, and it's harder as we get older, because everything's moving so quickly. the language, the terminology, trying to keep up. So like oftentimes I'm supporting, you know, elders that I know to try to understand things around disability justice, around trans inclusion, around abolition, and trying to forward that conversation. Biggest, greatest change making I can say is with my own children, is trying to give them the tools that they need to continue their journey in their life. Things that I've learned, I think, you know, I don't know, I remember being very acutely aware of being responsible to mistakes, to being held accountable by my elders. And I find that I think we need to bring that back a little bit, you know, just at the level of accountability to keep us humble, to keep us on the right path is really important. So thank you. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Well, thank you, love. Those responses, I mean, they just tell us so much, give us so much insight into moving forward, I think. And I thank you for sharing them. Now I'm asking the second question. What differences have you noticed in change work from when you first got involved compared to today or now? You know, that may not be so relevant for you, Quentrel, because you're more the now. But anyway, I would love to hear from all three of you.
Shelley, I think you're going to have to start naming us. And the sounds of things, there's going to be a lot of silence.
A lot of dead air.
Yeah. So I guess I'll hop in. It's actually an easy question for me to answer because I think about it a lot. And I think for me, technology would be really at the top of the list in how people organize. As a person who wasn't brought up with the technology that we have today, I'm still not hooked into all the ways that people have of contacting each other, mobilizing. And as I go along, I have to slip in one thing at a time to try. Like, I'm not even on Facebook. Like, you know, I'm not there. Not that I want to be there. But it's how quick, the numbers of people that you can reach in short period of time and mobilize them. But at the same time, I'm still using old-fashioned methods of calling people, which is, of course, is time-consuming. Not only to calling people, but I tend to use email. I have a little email list. But you know what I'm learning? I find it's in many ways just successful because it's that personal contact, and people really feel like if you took the time to call me or you took the time to send me this email that's geared toward me, then maybe I should be there. So it's not that I think that we still can't mobilize using those methods. I think we can, and that's another thing around intergenerational, is that a lot of the youth, it's like, I'll say, well, just call the person. And they'll say, what do I say? Like, you know, that really blows my mind. Like, what do you say? Same thing that you put in your Facebook or whatever you can do. But yeah, but I don't want to bother them, or what time should I call? Or, you know, all these questions around things that that's how we organized in the old days. Another thing is, I gear this to, I remember we used to call the white group. I don't even know what the name was anymore, but it was White People Against Racism that organized. I remember Jackie Barkley was really active in that group, as well as many others. But they were so welcome in anti-racist work. And it took the heat off us, who were people of color and Indigenous people, because there was these people that recognized this is our problem, that we've got something to do, but they disappeared over time. Well, I think some people were still in the background, but as an organized group. But I've been to a couple of meetings lately where they're reorganizing, trying to get white people against racism. Well, it's a new breed of youth. They're young people, much needed, but I think they have to. They'll come out with different ways. But I find it's a little slow. They're scared. I don't quite get that. So maybe youth could help me understand the fear. Like, why are they so fearful? These new young people, particularly in this case around white people. I think also Quentrel mentioned and Raven mentioned about respect for elders. And I have to admit, when I moved into this elder category, I was a little surprised. I'm like, oh, I'm an elder? Like, you know, I'm aged already? Kind of thing. And they say you need to be respectful. But I don't think we've unpacked, and I leave this for your group. I think respect needs to be unpacked. It's not just a word, it's an action. And I quite frankly think the action is not there. I had a young person, which I do sometimes do these open letters, that sent a really awful, it was an awful email to me about activity that was taking place that they were working on, and I was challenging something as a part of it. And they literally blasted and came out and called all kinds of names and how dare you do this. And it wasn't the fact that we had difference of opinion, it was the total lack of respect for the work that you're doing in all kinds of arenas, not just this one little corner. So now sometimes soon you'll see one of my open letters, which I sometimes write, is unpacking that. What, like, you know, so I would be really helpful with you guys in doing your work. What is this respect that we say we need, we respect, but yet we can do all these other things that to me are not respectful. So I leave it at that. Can't hear you, Shelley.
Thank you, Lynn. That's really, really a valid issue and a point that you made, you know, in terms of the respect that we were taught and that we on. And for some young people, it has not. Anyway, it's not for me to comment on. Go ahead, Quentrel, I guess.
Yeah, that respect piece is very important. I'll be honest, my parents still discipline me to this day. I may be 34 years old, but they are old school. My grandmother still, you know, Mayor Clyde Brooks still, listen, you have to have that respect for your elders. And that's how we were brought up. And it all starts at home too, right? Things that I've learned, I may have come up in the technology side of things, but I remember back when I started in 2012, kids really didn't know what was going on with the violence in the community and stuff, but now it's everywhere. They're seeing it on Facebook, they're seeing it on Instagram and TikTok and stuff. And that was the hardest thing for me, trying to explain to youth and kids about the violence. Like, they're seeing, you know, these murders happening, the people that they watched in their communities. And like, it used to be just like teenagers knew what was going on because of word of mouth in the community, but now the kids are seeing it because it's on Facebook, it's on, and I remember last year when we had the George Floyd killing, And I have a 9-year-old son, and you can't shelter kids away from that. He's seen it on TikTok. And you have a 9-year-old that wanted to be a cop, and he sees a cop killing a Black man. And it was the hardest conversation I had to have as a father, to explain to him about the situation, and that not every cop is that way, and he can be a difference getting into that profession. So that was one of the things that kind of opened up my eyes over the years, is that the kids are not sheltered from the violence and everything that's going on around the community anymore, because it's everywhere. You can't hide it. So that, and just when I first got into this activism and everything, it was geared towards violence, but over the years it evolved into more than just violence, and fighting for my community and for against racism and discrimination. So that aspect came up because, you know, when I got into this piece, I dealt with a lot of racism out here on the front lines, fighting for, you know, I was fighting for everyone, but, you know, they seen a Black man from Preston, all the stereotypes that go with Preston. I dealt with a lot of racism, and so it became a fight, not only for violence. It turned into racism and discrimination over the years, and just it opened up my eyes. When I came into this, I was blinded, didn't know what you know, how bad the violence was here. I didn't know how bad the racism was here, you know. But by 2016, my eyes were open and everything just came off, and you're seeing everything, and you're seeing Nova Scotia for what it really was, the systemic racism and all that. My blinders were off, and I wouldn't have known that had I not got into this work. So that was something that changed over the years for me, those few things. And the respect thing, I can't harp that enough, with the youth not being respectful towards those that are older than them. But I all say it starts at home. And I know my parents, listen, if an elder calls my parents and say, well, Quentrel disrespected me, when I get out mom and dad's, I'm gonna get a smack. I already know. I may be 34, but mom's like, I pushed you out and I'll take you out the same way. So that's one of the things I love about my parents, is having that strong support at home, and instilling in me the respect. And that's one thing that I take with me, and notice today, that the kids do have a lot less respect for the elders, and for, you know, just the work that they've done and how far they brought us. So that's the things that I've noticed that have changed over the years.
Thank you, Quentrel. And I want to Lynn's remark, Quentrel has thousands of followers. I'm a little jealous, really. I don't have as many as you. But thank you.
For me, I think, you know, back, I don't know, not even that far, even in my generation, you know, I was raised, you don't question your parents, you don't question your grandparents. You know, if they made a decision, that was a decision. You just had to deal with it. And I think there's like a complete collapse of humanity, because we've lost trust in our society. We've lost trust in our government. We've lost trust in being safe, you know, and this has been going on for like generations. But now youth are questioning, hey, this doesn't look right. Or, hey, you can't do this anymore. Oh, hey, you know, I think there's a law, like, you know, and for me, I think, I don't know, if I really look back, I think it started with even parental punishment. Is that there was a time, you know, you could get hit. I mean, I can't even get into details, but, you know, you don't even question it. There was a reason why you got hit, you know, and if you questioned it, you got hit again. And now, as the generations are getting older, it's like, you can't hit me. You have to put me on a timeout, or you have to do something like this. And it's created this, which I think is also good. You know, I'm not like for parental punishment all the time, but as an act of how this disrespect is being delivered. And before, also there was a heavy influence with the church, and you don't question the church, you don't question the word, you don't question what you're learning. So now people are thinking, okay, the church, what happened to the church? Residential schools? Now we questioned it. Now we lost that complete trust in the things that actually gave us foundation. And that trust reduces security. It creates fear. And so I think a lot of younger folks are afraid. They're afraid to like speak up because they maybe don't feel like they can trust themselves to say something without being canceled immediately, And in terms of respect, I mean, anything that I was taught with and raised with, you go to an elder with something, you bring something, like you offer it for their knowledge, like as a gift of appreciation. And we forget to do that. We forget to go to the homes, to knock on the doors. I brought you a tea. I made some muffins. Even if you don't bake, just buy them. We're missing those steps that are integral to keeping us connected and creating that confidence that we need and that security we need. So, thank you.
Thank you, Raven. I hadn't thought about it in terms of that, but that really gives us a picture of why, or one of the reasons why people are so fearful. Thank you. Jenna?
Yeah, so moving into our last question. We've spoke a little bit about this, but we're hoping that you can expand a little bit more with some more thoughts. So what do you think about collaborating and connecting across generations to make change? And do you think it's important? And I guess I'll ask Lynn to go first, if we'll keep with the...
I thought for sure you would have a different order this time. And you stuck to the norm. You wouldn't come out of that box. Collaboration. I think that it's absolutely critical. And I really loved Raven's thing about collaborating is in this intergenerational thing is somehow or the other people fail to talk about how much the elders learn from the younger people. We learn just as much from you as you talk about learning from us, and it's reciprocal. So I think we have to keep that too in focus. In order to do this connection, it goes back to this kind of ethics kind of thing. We have to think about, do we have the same, are we looking for the same things in the end? And I think that gets lost along the way, is what are we doing this change work for? What is our goal? Because believe it or not, it can be really different, and it's hard to collaborate and connect. Like sometimes, as a person, for example, I end up a lot in the media, not because I want to be there, because I don't, but you somehow or the other, because you're out there, you're doing things, or somebody else won't do it, you end up out there. So the goal is not to be in that limelight. You don't get up in the morning and say, I want to be on TV or whatever. But for some, it is their goal that you learn that. Like, I want to be in the limelight. I want to be in the media. I want to do this. Put me out front, kind of thing. So then, if we haven't talked about the end product of what we're trying to achieve, then it's not true collaboration and connection. So and we spend very little time talking about what our ultimate goals are. And we need to spend more time with that. The other thing is that I've been in so many groups where there's such a power imbalance within the group. For example, I'll just use this as an example. You can work with white organizations. They have so many resources at their fingertips. So there's this power imbalance. They're working with the Black community who may not have financial resources. They may not have the people resources. They may not have the same credibility in the larger community eye. So there's a true power imbalance that we have to look at and think, how are we going to use it to our advantage together to reach that end goal? But what ends up happening, in matter of fact, is often you have takeovers. It's no longer a collaboration, and one group takes over the other or controls the other, and because they have the certain resources, and we don't recognize the value of, for example, what the community brings to the table. Like, we might not recognize the value of the community network. We have strong networks. We don't talk about it. But for example, in the Black community, there's strong networks. If I need to find somebody, I'll guarantee you I can find them, because I might not know the person, or I might not know where they are. I can make a couple of calls. I know what that network is. But that's not valued as you're doing. That's just one thing that's not valued as you do this organizing work. I'll stop there, because I can go on and on and on about collaborating and connecting, because actually, having said all that, I almost name myself as the network queen. Because I'm constantly looking at what my end goal is, and how do I achieve that? How do I get it? I've got to go across all kinds of different communities, all kinds of different people to get that end goal. So I spend a lot of time building networks and collaborating and what have you. I can not collaborate today. I can be I don't like to call it your enemy. You may really frustrate me today, but tomorrow I need a network. I need to do things with you to get my end goal. So there's this, it's a wheel. It's not a one-shot deal. So I'll leave it at that, because I could go on and on.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm like thinking, because when you spoke earlier about young people being like scared to call and not knowing what to say, and then like this connection of like, if you don't have the conversation, how are you supposed to know if your goals aren't in line? Then it's just like a lot for me, because I am scared to call people sometimes, and I would just rather do it virtually. So thank you. Give me a lot to think about. I'll switch up the order a little bit. That's okay. And I'll pass it over to Raven.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Jones, for that. That was, yeah, I'm just soaking that in right now, just taking that all in. Yeah, again, just the sheer function of how things have gone with social media, with how we engage with the internet, people don't even go to the library anymore. Like, we're just all the information online. We don't have to talk to anybody. We could just order it. We could live, we could survive. And, a lot of folks, like Lynn was saying, want to be in that room, want to be at the front, as opposed to collaborating collectively, and I think, again, that also increases our trust and security, and knowing we're sharing, we're not doing this alone. I know so many people that have the same kind of goals as I do, who just want to remain individual leaders as opposed to working collectively. And we need each other. And as long as we're saying, honor our ancestors, we have to realize that those ancestors are here. We will be ancestors. and how we show up for our youth and how we show up for our younger generations and how we honor our elders is key to that. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for, you know, trying again with my kids, you know, trying to get them to just ask the questions, to walk with humility, that you don't know everything, you know, I don't know everything, that I have so much every day that I'm learning. In fact, the older I get, the more I realize how much I don't know, you know, so realizing that we really need each other to do this work, to do the work in a good way. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't know if you were going to speak, Quentrel. Thank you so much, Raven. Yeah, I'm trying to take in everything that everybody's saying because it's really hitting a lot of points for me, and the fact about not knowing everything and sitting with that and being okay with it. I think it's something that really is important for me to think about. Thank you. Quentrel.
Yeah, thank you, Raven and Ms. Jones for that. It was powerful, and the thing that I preach so much, and I tell people, the community raised me. I'm from East and North Preston. The community raised me. I'm not the man I am today without the elders in the community. Growing up in North and East Preston, being able to go and sit in anyone's house, get a meal, listen to the stories. I'm always sitting with my grandparents and sitting and understanding, you know, their perspective on things. And that's how I am today. I'm not me without the mentors that I have in my life and those people that direct me. And I'm always trying to bridge the gap with the youth and the elders, because they think that we're so far apart, but it's we're not even that far apart. We're actually the same. It's just different today than it was back then. And I tell them, you can't cross that bridge without the elders. It's like a car. They're the engine, we're the gas. The only way it's going to work is together. And so that's been a real thing for me. Growing up with the mentors that I had in North Preston, East Preston, I'm not where I'm at today. I'm not going in the path that I am today without those elders and those mentors. But one of the things that I did notice, and I was saying to someone the other day about it, is that so many of us are on the same path, but don't want to come together. And that's the frustrating part. Like we can all go together, but everyone, it seems, are trying to compete when we're all trying to chase the same goal. And it shouldn't be a competition. I was telling someone, this is not a competition. If we're all trying to end racism, if we're all trying to fight against violence and all the systemic issues in our communities, why are we all taking different paths? We are so much powerful together than separate. And one thing that really just stuck to me is that it's not a competition, but if we come together, and this was at lunch the other day with one of my best friends who's doing a lot of work in the community as well, Coulter Simmons, and I was just saying, like me and him do a lot of things together, and everything, and we were just sitting there saying, like, the younger generation has lost that kind of connection piece, where they're connecting with everyone else. I remember, hearing stories of how the activists back then came together and everyone came together to fight for the good cause. And then now the younger generation, it's like, well, if you're doing this and I'm doing the same thing, well, we're competing. Instead of for coming together and connecting the dots. I'm all for connecting with the elders and connecting the middle-aged and the younger. That's nothing works with all three. It's a three-headed monster that when it's together can't be stopped. So that's one of the things that I've learned getting into activism, seeing this side of things, that it doesn't work. I've been at a lot of tables where there's so much different agendas at the table. Everyone comes, we're trying to fight one cause, but there's different agendas at the table and everyone wants to lead. And it's hard for people to swallow pride and just sit back and listen. I like to go in a lot of meetings and just listen. I'll listen the whole meeting, won't say anything. And then at the end, I'm kind of like, okay, how is this gonna work for all of us together? Everyone that knows me knows that I swallow my pride. I take constructive criticism really well. One of the things getting into activism, I tell people, if you can't take constructive criticism, if you're not going to grow, being uncomfortable helps you grow and learn. And that's the hardest thing for a lot of people, is being uncomfortable. When they're in their comfort zone, that's where they're at. But being uncomfortable helps you grow and helps you learn. That's the only way you're going to get ahead in life. So I listen to my elders and my grandparents. They'll tell you, Mayo and Clyde Brooks, I sit down there with them and listen to them. They're the ones that watch the news all the time. I don't even watch the news all the time, but they watch the news and they give their opinions and everything, and just hearing how, well, back in my day, this wouldn't have happened. And I'm just like the stories just amaze me, how our ancestors, the things they went through, there's no words of how they made it here. Like, when I hear those stories of them walking from North Preston in snowstorms downtown just to make a couple dollars, I'm just like, y'all survived. Everyone getting on the back of one truck that was in the community, driving everyone to town. And it's just those stories that the resilience is on a whole different level. You know, a lot of people say, oh, the young people today, they're so resilient. But when you hear about, the ancestors and my elders and all the resilience that they did and everything, it's different. So that piece is so key in creating the change going forward. You can't do it without them.
Can't hear you.
Okay, thank you, Quentrel. You stole my closing lines, by the way. Because I was going to say we're stronger together, but you've already said it. I'm saying it again anyway. So at this time, I want to ask from the everybody who's online here, if you have any questions for the panel. They are open to questions, and as you've already witnessed, pretty insightful answers. The experience is just, and the stories are, will just add more to this conversation. So any questions? If you have questions, you can either go to the reactions and put up your hand, or you can just put your answer in the question chat for the panel. Okay, so you have two options. Okay, I've got a question from Tara to the panel. What kind of action items can you suggest for the topic mentioned? Anyone want to answer that? Any panelists care to answer that? Then she goes on to say, for everyday life in change work.
I think one of a key point is that, credit who you get this information from, really honor people who have done this work, who are in this work, honor their labor and how this information got to you, I think is really important. Every day, I'm not a huge fan of the self-care type of ideology, but taking care of yourself and taking care of the people around you, including your elders, including your youth, like not giving up on them. When their mistakes happen, you're going to be one of those people that make a mistake. So learn to swallow that with humbleness and keep going. You know, a lot of people make some not great decisions, and then they just disappear and they give up. You know, and I think we got to keep moving. And I think that's part of the issue with cancel culture, is that we're not there's no allowance for dignified ways of failing. You know, we have to fail with dignity, and we have to realize that we are going to fail. And, you know, that's why we need to hold each other up when those times happen. And when we speak to each other with gentleness and compassion, where there's room to grow, where there's room for forgiveness, for regrowth in these conversations.
Okay. Thank you, Raven. Did anyone else want to respond to the question?
I think one of the things that, if things are going to change, we have to be prepared to come out of our comfort zones. And that's what I find is the hardest thing for people to do. And also to recognize that we are in our comfort zones. It's all like, I've never been to a workshop. Maybe that's your next workshop, is exploring comfort zones. And what do comfort zones look like? And what does coming out of the comfort zones look like? And what is the end result we're looking for in terms of that? Because I just finished doing a session with a company, and that whole thing with comfort zones, they kept going back to what they were comfortable with. It wasn't that they were bad people or anything like that. It was that they just, and then I'd say, oh, you're gone back in that box. And they'd say, oh my gosh, I did. I'm so sorry. And like to recognize that. The other thing is, I'll tell a quick story. Many years ago, I was an employment counselor with the Federal Public Service.
I remember.
I had this client who was looking for work, and they weren't doing what I thought they should do in preparing to get a job. And so they didn't get a job, but I had taken the attitude like, I got a job, so this is your problem. You don't have a job, and if you don't want to work towards getting a job, that's your problem. But I was so happy. I never forgot that experience of going back, and because the guy really reprimanded. I mean, he berated me. He said, "Who do you think you are? Like, you act like you know, you're so great. You got a job." But I went back and I said, I am so sorry. Can we work together so I can learn what your feelings are or what your problems are, and you also look at what I'm trying to do or what my role is. To make a long story short, we worked together and we were both happy. He got a job, and I had learned to have a totally different attitude in my role as an employment counselor. But I say that because in change work, I now, when I'm doing things, if I don't get the change that I'm looking for, I do take it on. It's my problem. It's not the people that need the change or should have the change. It's my problem because I haven't learned how to motivate or to do things to get that change. I'm supposed to be providing this leadership, but I must not have found the right key to make it work. And when I use that framework, I find I'm much more successful in terms of getting the outcome. It's my problem. It is not the people's problem. It's my problem.
Okay. Thank you, Lynn. Quentrel, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd just say a few uncomfortable conversations. That's I'm just gonna, ride on her back with Ms. Jones' back with the uncomfortable conversation is key. Getting out that comfort zone and having those uncomfortable conversations. And the thing that I learned is basically seeing from the other person's perspective. I know a lot of people, you know, when someone has a different opinion, there's argument and everything. But I try and understand from their perspective on how they grew up and okay, tell me why you're saying this and why you're explaining it this way and why you're seeing it this way. So I try and see it from their lens. You can have your different opinions, but trying to see from their lens and your lens, and then see how, okay, well, maybe we can do this differently or like kind of compromise to meet middle ground. But not everything is going to be an argument or someone's not agreeing with you. It's just they grew up differently, and seeing it from that perspective has really helped me in a lot of situations. You know, I grew up in North Preston, East Preston. Someone, you know, even if I'm with someone from, you know, Africville or from the park or whatever, they may have grew up different and seen a different perspective on the same situation. So I have to understand their lens and how they perceive things, and that's so key. Because I used to, when I first started, I was so naive and was like, well, no, this is the way I grew up, and so I learned, and it was so key in, you know, creating relationships and building trust and working together. Just being able to see their different perspective from their lens, and that it's not that they're disagreeing, it's just that's the way they've seen things growing up, that's the way their perspective is on the situation that is in front of you. So that was one of the things that really helped me, and you can use it in everyday life, is basically seeing it from their lens.
Thank you, Quentrel. I have another question. This is from Evelyn White. Quentrel, you said you only recently came to understand the racism in Nova Scotia. How were you protected from that growing up?
I didn't really recently just come to know. I just didn't know how bad it was. That was what I was. Let me correct. That was what I was saying. Because, you know, as an 11-year-old, we were playing hide and go seek at my cousin's house downtown in Highfield, and, you know, police pulled us over as 11-year-old kids and was like, heard that we did a break and enter or whatever at 11 years old, and we weren't even the kids. We just fit the description of Black kids. Or, you know, being pulled over by our CMP and having to meet with the inspector and everything for being profiled as a Black man. Or when I applied to a job, you know, I was 16, I believe, I applied to a job. I had North Preston, Quentrel, Provo, North Preston on it. Didn't get a call back. I sent that same resume with my first name, I'm David Jr., and Dartmouth on it. And I get a call back, and I walk into the interview room, and they have the resume with Quentrel Provo with an X on it. These were the pile of the people, and they said they already called Quentrel Provo, and I was like, how did you, if I'm sitting right in front of you? And I showed them my ID, and the embarrassment and seeing their face and their reaction. But when I got into doing Stop the Violence, I seen a whole different side of racism, where when our young Black men were being gunned down, you know, I'm getting messages from people that we don't have a gun problem, we have a Black problem. We need to get rid of Black people. So I started getting those type of messages and started seeing it. You know, I was speaking at an anti-racism event, and a man stood up and at the anti-racism event and said, you know, it's scientifically proven that white people are better than Black people. So that's when I really started to see racism for what it is right here in Nova Scotia. So I wasn't really protected from it. It just, I knew, you know, from my personal experiences that there was racism, but I didn't know how bad it was. And being able to, I lived in Toronto and other places. Here in Nova Scotia, racism is the worst in Canada. And I'm going to say that it's the worst in Canada because we're the Indigenous Black people here.
Right.
Everywhere in Canada, you don't face the type of racism you face here. Sometimes it's right in your face and there's nothing done about it. So it's not that I was kind of protected from it. It just, as I grew older, I started to see how bad it was.
Okay, thank you, Quentrel, for explaining that. I got one other question. I guess this has to be the last one. This is from Karen Bradley. She asks, is there active, open anti-racism training for white people in Nova Scotia? Open for individuals, that is, not just organizations. Anyone want to respond to that? Lynn?
Yeah, I was trying to unmute there. Yes, there's a new group started. Unfortunately, I don't have their contact information at hand, but Shelley Jackie would have that
Okay.
information, and that's exactly what they're doing, trying to get individuals and more involved as white people in the struggle. So it would be a great group to connect with, because they're just starting, they're brand new and just feeling their way themselves, and they have some elders that are helping them to look at what they did in the past, and they are organizing differently as young people in this day. So I'm sure you would be able to help them get Jackie's information to know how to connect.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Now, there's a comment as well about that Game Changer 902. I guess I know they are up for it, so I'm not sure. Tyler said that there might be training there. Tyler also put a link to their Facebook page, so that's in the chat as well. So
I just want to add, if I can, Shelley.
Yeah, please.
That as someone who does a lot of anti-racism work, you know, people don't consider these conversations and these panels as training. You know, when we're sharing our stories, when we're sharing our lived experience, this is knowledge. You know, this is training. This is understanding the depths of the systems that we're engaging with. So that needs to be acknowledged. The other thing is, you know, when you do have Black and Indigenous people that are doing this work, that you hire them, because that's their career. They're accepting that position to do this work and deserve to be paid for it. And the third thing is that there's not an end to this work. You know, I think the problem with when we say anti-racist training is that there's an end to it. You know, you get first aid training, at the end of it, you can save a life. Well, there's no like end to anti-racism training. And so it's a continual process, and it's something that, you know, I encourage everyone to continue to do. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Raven. That is so true. Thank you. All right.
Sharing, and also while our panelists were speaking earlier, we've had Mo capturing what we've been sharing. And so I'm now going to pass it over to Mo to share what they've recorded.
Great, thank you. So just a quick look at this piece, which you will get a graphic of, but this is the graphic from the panelists sharing. So there's that piece, but then just the share back from the conversations that happened. So these kind of making connections. So some beautiful themes that came up in there around being in change for the long term, building relationships and building trust, the barriers of kind of doing work in this way around fear or not knowing how to connect or reach out. Capitalism is a barrier. Also kind of how to do that in rural spaces or the kind of isolation we might experience. But also really beautiful kind of suggestions about trying something small and reaching out to make connections. The importance of growing together and being uncomfortable, or being willing to change yourself in the midst of it. The importance of respect, mutuality, and offering. So information exchange, sharing skills and in ordinary ways of our kind of life skills together, as well as maybe our expertise and knowledge. And that connecting to this kind of how to be sharing in our networks and continuing to build networks and understanding who needs to be there, who has particular knowledge or understanding that could benefit by being there, and how do we connect those people.
Mm-hmm.
And also a piece around understanding the history of racism in this place, and really doing the work to understand that in order to move forward, and with the aspiration that that will be less for the next generations. Great. So that's oh, and just a piece also around understanding that there is a distinction between seniors and elders, and acknowledging that those that having some understanding in that distinction is really helpful in this conversation.
Oh, there's a lot of incredible comments in here about your work. Amazing, gorgeous, so talented. It amazes me how you pick up the key themes. Thank you so much for giving us this picture of what we've done today. So now we're going to go forward with our checkout activity. And so we just ask that you share in the chat your couple words that you want to say about today's session, how you feel now, just whatever you want to share with us. Especially around, you know, connections through the generations and what they mean. Yeah, I have to say too, I feel so blessed to have the stories from the panelists. They were incredible. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. And I also want to thank everyone who came today and guiding us through all of this intergenerational wisdom. Like Lynn said, you know, it's kind of a starting point for us because we never really talk about this. So just to say again, thank you. We will be talking soon. And like Quentrel already said, remember, we are stronger together. And that kind of wraps up today's session. Thank you again, everyone who participated. Thank you for that.